This is News 6 Tonight.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Friday edition of News 6 Tonight. Thank you so much for making some time to be with us and catch up on some of the day's headlines. You'll notice that Matt Austin is not here tonight, but we are so fortunate. We have one of our News 6 investigators, Mike DeForest, in tonight. Mike, thank you for being here and staying, past what you would normally stay on a Friday
night. This is what I love doing on my
Oh, I
Friday
know. I
nights.
bet you do. Okay, that is a document dump.
And I know Matt really wishes he was here.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I'm so glad you're here because your story, not only is that our lead story today, but this is a story that people have been talking about, not just nationally, but internationally for a few months now because it happened in September. And we're talking about the young man, the 32-year-old man who died on one of Epic Universe's roller coasters. And it happened just after the park opened for a few months.
And I think this caught everybody's attention, one, because those of us who live in Central Florida, we go to these theme parks, so we understand it. And it is so rare to have a death like we saw on this roller coaster. And because those of us who know how these things work, it's so difficult to imagine how it could happen because these things are engineered for safety and you've got these restraints on. So there were so many questions for what now has been 3 months. And I think I can say that it was only over the last 2 days have we really gotten a sense of how this tragedy occurred. And it was a tragedy. And I think the best way to sum this up is as we kind of knew from the beginning that Kevin Rodriguez Zavala, he was born with spinal atrophy and used a wheelchair. A lot of people speculated that was the reason for his death, but when nobody with firsthand knowledge was telling us how he died, the only little sliver of information we've had for months is that he suffered blunt impact injuries. In other words, beaten to death on the roller coaster. And how does that happen?
On a roller coaster?
Disability or not. How do you get, in essence, beaten to death on a roller coaster? And so what we found out over the last 2 days with a combination of the Orange County Sheriff's Office, which did a death investigation, and then the autopsy report. And pardon me as some of these descriptions may be a bit gruesome, but it helps us understand what happens, is that it now appears that Kevin Rodriguez Zavala had a broken femur, your thigh bone. That was broken, it appears, during the ride. Also came out that he had a pre-existing fracture on his other leg that was, as the medical examiner described, dislocated. So now we know that he had problems with his upper legs, perhaps from this ride. And then to hear what his girlfriend, who was sitting right next to him on the ride, told investigators, as they started going down the very first drop, he came out of his seat, which you shouldn't do if you've got one of these lap restraints on. But she says he came out of his seat and bashed his head on a metal bar that the average rider shouldn't be able to reach. When he pulled back into the station, there was a doctor who was on vacation who just happened to be in line and jumped to try to help at first. and she said it looked like he was pretty well gone when the train came back into the station, and she saw the way his leg was broken, and she speculated at the time that it was probably because of that perhaps that's how he, in essence, at least partially slipped out of his restraint to then hit his head on this metal bar, and it was that hitting of the metal bar is what the medical examiner concluded caused those blunt impact injuries. Now, how did he break his leg on this ride? We don't know from this. However, I can tell you the report did say that we knew he was in a wheelchair and he was paralyzed. And people who are paralyzed typically have low bone density because they're not able to exercise that, and low muscles, and they are more apt to break bones. So we don't know what happens, but we're starting to see perhaps how this happened and how Universal Orlando, after spending a couple weeks thoroughly investigating this attraction to make sure it was running, and they said it operated perfectly. Now we can see how all those pieces fit together, and it was just a tragedy.
And now, in hindsight, now that you have all of this information in the new document, it makes sense why they would come to the conclusion, because people say they came to the conclusion rather quickly because the ride opened again October 4th, if I'm not mistaken, and people are like, it's still a death investigation. They don't know how he died. Why is this ride still up and running? But they probably, based on what you're reporting right now, had a good idea because, of course, they have video along the course and they can see exactly what happened. And no doubt they interviewed the girlfriend.
Well, and that's what it does look like now based on what we can now see the law enforcement investigation complete. It looked like they did have a pretty good idea shortly after this happened. When you mentioned the cameras, though, and there were cameras, that's one thing that came out in the law enforcement investigation is they could see Mr. Rodriguez Zavala at the beginning with the camera shots, and they could see when he came to a stop at the end that he was not doing well. But what happened in the middle, they say the actual, I don't know if it was the video quality, but it was the angle of the video. They were not able to use the video to help them in their investigation as much as I think they would have liked.
Now, and the thing is, we were saying when this story first happened, we're like, why isn't Universal releasing more information to the media? Because all we wanted to know is how in the world, what does blunt force trauma look like or mean on a roller coaster, a brand new coaster at that, and it's the centerpiece of this new theme park. So that was very concerning for a lot of people. But based on the reporting and what we know now, they had a lot more information that they just weren't revealing to us. But you had a difficult time getting information about this story when it first, back in September and October.
Well, and I think, and I don't want to speak for Universal Orlando, but you can imagine the nature of this. This is I don't even know the cost of this attraction on their brand new theme park, and I'm sure there's a public relations aspect to this too, but there's also a legal aspect to this too. Is now you have a patron who's dead, and his family hires one of the country's most well-known civil rights attorneys, Benjamin Crump, and as you can recall, right after this happened, that attorney who represented the family was very vocal about what they felt was Universal putting Kevin Rodriguez Zavala in danger and perhaps others. I do want to point out, because there's been a lot of confusion about this, there has been no lawsuit ever filed in relation to this, and in fact we have not heard from attorney Benjamin Crump in more than 2 months. So take that with that. There has not been any lawsuits filed. We don't know if anything happened behind the scenes.
He had a press conference almost 2 months ago, and you got to question him about a couple of things.
Well, and I think that was a big question a lot of observers had, was everybody knew that Mr. Rodriguez Zavala was in a wheelchair and had some disabilities. There were signs posted then saying that if you have neck, back, or other similar problems, you shouldn't be riding this. And I got to admit, as a journalist, I didn't attend the first 2 press conferences he had, but you've got the family there and they're weeping, and you have to kind of take a moment. You don't want to ask, you want to know the answers to the hard questions, but you have to be sensitive. And I think it was about the time they called a 3rd press conference, and I was there and still bringing the family. I think now it's time to ask those questions. And so I point blank asked Mr. Crump, did he have neck, back, or other issues? Mr. Crump said no, got a little bit upset by that question. One of his fellow attorneys came in and I think basically said that those signs were vague. What we now know from this autopsy report and the law enforcement investigation is that Mr. Rodriguez Zavala actually had more severe pre-existing injuries than I think any of us could have imagined early on. Yes, he was an avid roller coaster rider. Came out in the investigation, though, his mom told him, don't ride roller coasters.
Yeah, that was one of the other tragic things about this story, too. And you just reminded me of something else that I had a question about. When you talk about pre-existing conditions, when this report was first filed by Epic Universe, and it went to the state, it had that he had pre-existing conditions, and then it was taken out of the final report.
This and this was a story we had done a couple days ago, and you have to understand that for nearly 3 months, we knew that he had blunt force impact injuries, but nobody was saying how that happened, and there was. I guess it's fair to say it was unusual. It's unusual that this type of death would happen. It was unusual that the state of Florida sent amusement ride investigators to Universal Orlando to, in essence, kind of oversee what they were doing. And why that is unusual is because under state law, large theme parks like Universal and Disney are exempt from state oversight. It was through my investigations that actually the state actually acknowledged, well, Universal invited us to be there.
Yeah.
And they did, and they observed. It was interesting that despite being there, these state government workers did not create any documentation that would later become public record that I had requested, and they said it doesn't exist. So each step of the way, we're trying to get answers over these last 3 months. And then even Universal, as you mentioned, had submitted a report to the state and first put in that there was pre-existing conditions. They took it out after talking with the state, and it just left so many questions that I think we can finally say were mostly answered over these last 2 days with law enforcement and the medical examiner producing these reports.
Is it fair to say case closed?
I think it was. I think in many people's mind it was case closed once they reopened the roller coaster. Now I think the public has a better understanding of that question that I brought up at the very beginning: is how does someone, disabled or not, escape from a restraint on a roller coaster and in essence get beaten to death, blunt force injuries? Well, now we know it was because it appears he broke his upper legs, and according to the witness descriptions, may have lifted out of his seat and hit his head, something that's not going to typically happen to the average rider.
Yeah, I just want to commend you on all of your reporting and just making sure you got all the records and filing for the reports. You just celebrated last week 25 years here in Central Florida and at one place, WKMG News 6. And just based on all the things that you've reported on in the past, people who know you know that this is a reason you've been able to be just here for 25 years. And we are, boy, really happy to have you here, because we wouldn't have had some of the answers, because I don't know if a lot of people would spend that kind of time digging and looking into the things that you looked into. So great job by that. It's a shameless self-promotion, but not by you, but I'm doing it, but I work here with you, and happy that we do. Thanks, Mike. All right, another story that's making headlines tonight is, do you know what Roblox are?
I think my kid played them a little bit, and I never quite understood it. That was that generational divide of that was not my Super Mario Brothers and Space Invaders.
Okay,
but
well,
yes.
It is super popular, but they are definitely now being accused of not protecting our kids. Your kids are out of that age where they would do that.
They're not into Roblox anymore.
Okay, great. Okay, so there are 380 million monthly users on this thing. So you might imagine that people who have ill intent know where to go if they can find kids. And that's the problem that our Florida Attorney General is saying, that the company is not doing enough to protect the kids who are on Roblox, and they're making it easier for predators to prey upon our kids. And our Stephanie Rodriguez has more on that story.
Roblox aggressively markets to young children, but fails to protect them from sexual predators. As a father of 3 little ones and as Florida's Attorney General, my #1 priority is simple: to protect our kids.
James Uthmeyer posted that video to social media Thursday. The suit claims the company knows it isn't putting proper safeguards in place and is even downplaying issues with sexualized adult and predatory content. Dozens of families are also in the process of suing the company, and one is right here in Central Florida. We spoke to the attorney of a Brevard County family that's taking on the gaming platform as well, claiming that their 9-year-old daughter was manipulated by a predator posing as another child. The family says she was persuaded to send sexually explicit images of herself in exchange for the game's virtual currency.
Roblox has been depriving parents of the proper level of fear, right, by giving them a false sense of security and safety. And it's because of that, parents have trusted Roblox, let their kids on the platform unsupervised. They're getting raped, they're getting molested, bad things are happening.
Roblox has responded to the state lawsuit, saying it, quote, fundamentally misrepresents how Roblox works. Roblox is built with safety at its core. We have advanced safeguards that monitor our platform for harmful content and communications.
Yeah, and that's not the full statement from Roblox, but we put the full statement from that company on clickorlando.com. Still more to come on that as we continue to figure out how to keep kids safe online. And it is just one of those things where, you know, you close one door and another door opens, and those are not the doors you necessarily
One of the things that
want
struck me about
open.
that is Roblox said that they had stopped a significant number of these predators, which is noteworthy that they tried to stop it, but it
Yeah.
just goes to show they're there. The
And
predators
very
are there.
persistent, very persistent. So we'll continue to follow that story and bring you more on that as we learn more about what happens with them. All right, there is a street in the Pine Hills area of Orange County where it's called Silver Star Road, and we've all driven on that road.
I used to
mostly on
drive that way going home from work, and the story I saw
Did you-
firsthand.
okay, so you encountered people who were crossing not at crosswalks. I mean, at any part of the road, you will find people crossing in both directions. And it is scary to come across people who are in the middle of a road where you're going full speed or the speed limit, which is still fast if someone's crossing. And you do not want to hit. It's one of my biggest fears. I do not want to be responsible for hitting somebody outside of a crosswalk or even in a crosswalk. Well, this week, 2 people were hit. One of them even died. So now people are wondering what can be done to make this part of the road safe, because people are saying until we have more crosswalks on Silver Star Road, we're going to continue to cross where it's convenient for us. Our Jarrell Baker has more on that.
We've seen it firsthand in Pine Hills for years. People young and old cutting through traffic on Silver Star Road without using the crosswalk.
People are being killed. The crosswalk is there for a reason. They need to follow those directions.
Monday evening, a driver hit 2 people on Silver Star near Lahar Boulevard and just kept going. One of them died. FHP says that the victim was not in a marked crosswalk.
At the end of the day, it's about safety. So I would rather walk a little further to be safe than to try to take a shortcut.
But others say that following the rules isn't always easy.
Where's the next crosswalk? Like you literally can't see it. Versus, I got to get right there.
Including Monday's deadly hit and run, Silver Star Road has seen 8 crashes with pedestrians in 2025 between Mercy Drive and Good Homes Road. Going back to 2021, we found 51 pedestrian crashes there. In 4 of those cases, people died. FDOT says they are sad to hear about Monday's deadly hit and run, and several safety projects are in the works, including adding new crosswalks, lighting, and R-cut intersections.
Yeah, some of those intersections are hard to negotiate, but man, you do not want to cross those roads unless you are in a crosswalk. And here in Florida, we have so many hit and runs anyway, and I'm generalizing, but even sometimes in a crosswalk, you're not safe because of the way people drive.
And
here.
I think one of the challenges out on Silver Stars, we see a lot of areas, those are long blocks.
Yeah.
That even if you wanted, yes, you could walk to the crosswalk, but it is
It's a haul.
inconvenient. And I think, too, it's human nature when you live in that area, you work in that area, and you do it all the time, it kind of desensitizes you to the risk involved as the pedestrian. But, yeah, what is it, 3 or 4 lanes if there's a turn lane
At
sometimes
least.
on each side.
Yeah.
And lighting issues. And
Yeah.
I know that nearby in that area, I think off of Pine Hills Road, over the last couple of years through some improvement projects, they have put those little fences in the middle. I don't know what statistically yet how that may have
And
curbed the
they're
problem
considering the
there, but-
barricades here on Silver Star, but people always find a way. They will climb over them or do whatever. So hopefully something will work, because losing life of any kind on a road like that is just terrible anytime it happens, and we always have to report on it. All right, stay with us. There's more of News 6 tonight to come, including if you're an AT&T customer, past or present, you may be due for some money. We'll talk about why coming back. Yeah, and you got the link from the show just a little while ago, I think. So we'll make sure we have that for News 6 tonight. Hey, thanks for stopping by. We know you're busy, but news doesn't stop, and neither do we.
That's right. And this is News 6 Tonight, where we leverage this entire busy newsroom with our community correspondents, our producers, our content desk, And then we filter through that. We have a casual conversation about the news that impacts Central Florida.
Yeah, we live here in the community and we rely on you for our neighborhood network because you're our eyes and ears as well, and we can't do it without you.
So you can watch us all over the place, YouTube, News 6 Plus app, and clickorlando.com. While you're here, feel free to engage. Let us know who you are and where you're from.
Well, welcome back to News 6 Tonight, everyone, on a Friday. Thank you for making time to kind of catch up on some of the big stories today that you may have missed earlier. And hopefully you were at the top of the hour to hear about Mike's big investigation on what's happening at Epic Universe. That has come to a conclusion, thankfully, it looks like. Another story we're talking about tonight is AT&T. I'm not an AT&T customer, but I have been in the past. There's been a data breach that happened years ago, and now you may be eligible for up to $7,500. And that's not just us saying that, and you end up with 50 cents. You know, you're a part of these big...
Well, it seems like, every company I do business with has had that data breach. And
Yeah,
you fill
yeah.
out the form, but
And
this
it's
one's
like-
got some significant money behind it
Yeah,
if you're eligible.
exactly. So our News 6 investigator, Donovan Murray, explains why you may be due up to $7,500.
Recently, AT&T agreed to pay $177 million to settle claims stemming from two separate breaches discovered back in 2024. Customers who were included in this settlement had their account information exposed through the first breach. In the second breach, customers had detailed metadata from their calls and text messages exposed. Combined, the two AT&T breaches affected over 180 million accounts, with some customers being hit both times. The owners of the breached accounts should have by now received a notice from a company called Crawl. They are the settlement administrator for the case. So, how do you know if you're eligible? There is no public search tool where you can simply type in your name. Instead, go to the official settlement website, telecomdatasettlement.com. If you received a notice in the mail or by email, enter the class member ID that came with it by clicking Submit Claim. However, if you didn't get a notice or you lost your member ID, you can still start your claim process by skipping Submit Claim and instead clicking on Resend Class Member ID. If your account information or metadata was exposed, Crawl should send you information for you to get started. If you're still unsure and need more help, you can call the settlement administrator directly at 833-890-4930.
Okay, and we put all that information online so you can figure out how to figure out if you are due some money. Again, the deadline to make that claim is next Thursday, which is December 18th, so you still have some time.
I'm a longtime AT&T customer, and actually, after seeing this, went and ran it. I'm
Yeah.
not eligible, but
You're not getting any Christmas
but
money.
it was an easy process to do just to see if
Okay, yeah.
that if you were
If you
to
were.
have been exposed in this.
Yeah,
this breach.
but it seems like there's so many of these breaches. Who can keep up? But this one was pretty significant. All right, we've talked about this before, e-bikes. Do you have an e-bike?
No, I rode one for the first time this summer. It was low speed. Loved it. You still had to pedal. I still sweated. And yeah, so I'm like,
Okay.
you're still working. It's not really fast.
Sure.
But then I've seen the ones in my neighborhood zipping by almost like a moped.
They're like little rockets, some of them.
And little kids on them sometimes. And,
Yeah.
and
Part
if
of the
you're behind
problem-
the car, you're slamming on the brakes. watching them.
Exactly. Or if they're on the sidewalk and you aren't expecting them. Well, one Florida city is considering some of the strictest rules that we have seen yet when it comes to e-bikes. Last night, Winter Garden they voted to move forward with a new ordinance. It calls for no one under 15, because you said you can see little kids, and I do too. You see the little kids on the bikes, and it restricts them from going on the West Orange Trail, which is a very popular bike trail. I've been on that. If you are in violation, it's $100 per fine, and as a parent, you will have to pay that fine. Mark Lehman was actually able to catch up with some bicyclists on the trail to see what they think about this.
What kind of situations have you seen on the trail?
Mostly speed, mostly just way too fast on the trail, because it's not only for experienced bikers.
All right, so several cities and counties across Central Florida have been talking about e-bike safety because it is a concern. It's all in response to a rise of crashes we're seeing. See, if you come across somebody going really pretty fast, that's a regular speed. That's what I could handle right there. And so some of us have seen serious injuries happen because we've reported it on these injuries.
And yet there's a whole other side to this too, which are folks, particularly the retirees we have here in Central Florida. They're people who have mobility issues. Yeah. And these bikes give them the ability to get out there and do something that they haven't always been able to do. So there may be a time and place for these, but the problem, anytime we have a new technology or an advancing technology, is where do you draw that line?
Where do you draw the line? All right, a second reading of that ordinance is January 8th. All right, we have talked so much. We've got so little time left. We're going to check in with meteorologist Jonathan Kegas now to give us the lowdown on the forecast, because it was chilly this morning.
Yeah, do you want to see where it's really cold, guys? Like really cold?
Yeah.
Okay, take a look at this. These are the current wind chills. So that's the temperature plus the wind factored in, and it is pretty ridiculous up in the northern tier of the country. It's 19 degrees below zero in Minneapolis, Minnesota, 28 below in Bismarck. That's with the wind factored in. This is actually our next round of cold that comes in on Monday. This is the source region for it. So we're going to be nice and warm this weekend. We're going to get back up to near 80 degrees in some cases across Central Florida. New cold front comes in. A lot of this is going to be modified. And because of the pattern that we're going to get ourselves into getting into Christmas, it's going to fend off some of this chill. It's wild up there. Coming up at 9:30, we are going to talk about the warm weekend, and then we are going to talk about, look at our long-range forecast we put together on Monday to see if that's still working out when it comes to Christmas. That's coming up at 9:30.
Jonathan, you and I both began our careers in Minnesota. I saw that 12. I'm glad we're both on this side of the country now, buddy.
Exactly.
No doubt about it, for sure. It feels great outside.
Thanks, Jonathan. We'll see you at 9:30, and we'll be right back.
Welcome to News 6 Tonight. We are so thankful that you're joining us here wherever you found us.
Yeah, you know what this tells me? If you have made this your new streaming destination, it tells me you're smart. Also good looking, because you chose to watch the news in a different way. That makes you really smart. Anybody can give you the news from a teleprompter or an old newspaper. We do it in a fresh new way.
That's right. So check us out wherever you like to stream. We have this app for your TV, News 6 Plus. You can find it on Roku and Amazon and whatever your smart TV is cooking. So thank you. We would love to hear your comments down below.
My gosh. Yeah.
And then we'll show them.
Yeah, we will. News 6 Plus. The plus is you.
Ooh.
All right, this story, you wonder why we're doing it, because it starts in Kentucky, but it is a cold case that leads all the way back to Marion County. It's a dad who lost track of his daughter. His wife and daughter were moving to Florida, and when he got here, they were nowhere to be found. But 40 years later, they knock on this daughter's door and say, did you know you might be the victim of a crime? I know, it's really, really one of those bizarre stories. So let's listen to our CNN reporter fill us in on the details on that.
She's always been in our heart. I can't explain that moment walking in and get to put my arms back around my daughter.
43 years of waiting.
And it's hard to look at her as an adult when I last seen her, she was a 3-year-old.
We spoke to Joe Newton in 1986 about the case.
Wouldn't you want your child back, at least to see her grow up or, to help her?
In 1983, Joe and his wife Deborah were planning to move to Georgia. Deborah left early with their daughter Michelle, but when Joe arrived, they were gone. And for more than 4 decades, there were no answers. A Crime Stoppers tip cracked this case this year, leading to Deborah's arrest in Florida and her first court appearance in Jefferson County on Monday. 2 weeks ago, Michelle came home from work to police at her door, saying the unthinkable.
You're not who you think you are. You're a missing person. You're Michelle Marie Newton.
When she and her father finally met, Joe was on the porch waiting.
I wouldn't trade that moment for anything. It was
No.
just like I seen her when she was first born.
And even with her life upended, her response wasn't anger.
My intention is to support them both through this and try to navigate and help them both just wrap it up so that we can all heal and hopefully, there's just apologies and start healing.
Starting a new chapter of forgiveness and moving forward.
And it's still hard to believe that we actually got her back in our life again. And it's a sweet ending.
Pretty incredible. And the woman responsible for that, her name is Deborah Newton. She's facing felony custodial kidnapping charges for that crime that happened 4 decades ago. And because there's no statute of limitations on a felony kidnapping, she still faces these charges all these years later.
Unbelievable saga.
Yeah, it really is. All right. Thank you, Mike, for being here tonight. It's been a joy having you, and thank you for updating us on that Epic Universe story. Thank you for being with us. We hope you have a great night, and we'll see you back here again on Monday. Bye.